Layout Works is a printing press that takes 25 days to settle its payables. Customers take an average of 10 days to pay layout. Given that the average cash conversion cycle of the printing industry is 110 days, the firm's estimated days of inventory on hand is close to 2. So we're going to be using our cash conversion cycle formula here, which is given to us as days sales outstanding plus days inventory on hand. So this is what we're going to be solving for, and then minus days of payable. So we're given days payable at 25, days sales outstanding is how long it takes our customers to pay us, so that'll be 10, and we're given cash conversion at 110. So from here, it's really just solving for X, doing our algebra, working this through. We get to 125 for days inventory on hand, which would be answer C. Adam Geller is the CFO of Cube Corp and is also the chairman of the board. Board members do not have sufficient control over management because the board is not comprised of a majority of independent outsiders. So this is not good governance. Cube's shareholders recently accused the firm of misrepresenting its financial reports. Which of the following factors is most likely responsible for management's action of providing low-quality financial reporting? Is it A, motivation, B, opportunity, or C, rationalization? So this one is going to be B, opportunity. And the reason for that is this here. We don't have a majority independent outsiders. So that essentially gives them the opportunity to misrepresent its financial reports because they don't have proper checks and balances in place. If it were motivation, this would be something like the CFO has a performance bonus due at the end of the day, so because of this, they are motivated to misrepresent the financial reports. And rationalization, this would be something related to unethical behavior, which is not mentioned here, and the rationalizing of that. So there's not really anything mentioned in here that would lead us to motivation or rationalization. The key is that opportunity. Answer B. If a deferred tax liability is not expected to be reversed in the future, how should it most likely be classified? Is it equity, income, or liability? So it's not going to be a liability anymore. It was a liability, but now it's not expected to have to be paid in the future, which is implied by it not expected to be reversed. So we have equity and income. So thinking about it from a income statement versus balance sheet standpoint, if we have assets equal to liabilities plus equity, our assets are staying static. Nothing's changing there. So if our liability goes down, what do we need to do to offset that? We need to increase our equity. And so it's going to make most sense to recognize this as equity on the balance sheet, not through the income statement, because it isn't technically income. It's something that's not going to be outgoing anyway. Answer A. For the past year, Firm X, an Austrian high-tech firm that follows IFRS, has spent $5 million on research costs and $5 million on development costs on a staff management software whose feasibility has been established. Firm Z, an American space tech firm that reports under US GAAP, is in the early stages of a similar project whose completion is still in question, but the firm has also spent $5 million on research costs and $5 million on development costs over the same period. If both firms had the same revenue, which firm will most likely report the highest net income? Is it Firm X will report higher, Firm Z will report higher, or they will report the same net income? So this isn't going to be the same. The key here is IFRS versus GAAP, and essentially whether or not these research and development costs can be expensed or can be capitalized and expensed over time versus needing to be expensed now. And so the key here too is feasibility. So under this IFRS program, we have development costs on staff management software, and the feasibility has been established. So under this scenario, it's going to be more likely that we're going to be able to capitalize these research costs and expense them over time. If we're expensing them over time, then we're going to be reporting higher net income because our expenses in the current period are going to be lower. If this space tech firm doesn't have feasibility and they're spending the same amount over that period and they're having to expense that now, that's going to lower their revenue to a larger extent than firm X. So that's going to lead to A, firm X reporting higher net income. Under which of the following cases is the capitalization of development costs most likely prohibited? In the case of an IFRS compliant company, B, software development by a company following US GAAP, or C, the development of a life-saving drug by a company following US GAAP. So IFRS is going to be more lenient on allowing the capitalization of development costs than GAAP. So we can rule the IFRS out right away. The exception for GAAP is software, however. So software development is going to be more likely to be able to be capitalized and held as an intangible on the balance sheet and then expensed over time. So that's going to lead us to see this development of life-saving drug is most likely going to need to be prohibited from capitalizing this, and they're going to have to expense it in the current period or as the costs are incurred. Answer C. John, an experienced portfolio manager, has been tracking the performance of Blue Chip Co., a leading firm in the technology sector. Blue Chip Co. has outperformed market expectations for the last several quarters, bolstering John's confidence in the company's future prospects. Despite recent industry-wide downturns and analyst reports suggesting a cooling off in the tech sector, John is convinced Blue Chip will continue to outperform based on his detailed analysis and understanding the company's fundamentals. He disregards the recent negative reports, attributing them to market overreaction. Which of the following biases is John most likely exhibiting in his analysis? Is it A, overconfidence bias? This is not overconfidence bias. It does mention his confidence is increased due to that, but overconfidence would be more so John talking about his individual abilities being so great based on his stock picks or something like that. Whereas this is looking more at a information bias by omitting certain information. So between confirmation bias and conservatism bias is going to be more so related to being too conservative and cautious in decision making. However, he's not being super cautious because the rest of the market is saying that there's going to be a cool off in the industry, and he's going the opposite direction. So if he was being more conservative, that might fall under this bucket, but he's kind of being the opposite. He's not being conservative. So this is going to be B, confirmation bias, which is a information-related bias. And essentially, he's just ignoring information that is going to back up his view. So his view is that the company's going to do good. However, all this information is saying that they're suggesting a cool off and it's going to do bad. So because of that, he's just ignoring those negative reports, which is going to be B, confirmation bias. Which of the following statements is most likely correct? The activity ratio. So the activity ratio is going to measure how quickly or how efficiently we're able to convert our assets into cash and or sales. So with that in mind, let's dig into these answers. A indicates how efficiently a company performs its day-to-day tasks. That sounds like it could be our answer. This isn't a efficiency measure and is telling us how efficiently we're operating on a day-to-day basis. So it sounds like A will be good. Let's make sure we can rule out the others. B is not relevant for financial statement analysis as it indicates the operation efficiency. Well, operational efficiencies are going to flow right through to our financial statements because with this activity ratio, it's involving sales, cash conversion. These are all going to show up on the financial statements. So it is certainly relevant. And C measures the quantity of an asset or flow that is associated with the ownership of a specific claim. This is describing valuation metrics like price to earnings or price to cash flow. So that's not going to be related to the activity ratio. We can rule that out and confidently go with answer A. Which of the following most likely indicate accounting manipulations in the financial statements? Company E's sales are 40% lower than the sales of Company F. Both are engaged in the production of TV shows. This is not going to be manipulation. It sounds like Company F just has more market share than Company E. Just because they're in the same business doesn't mean they're going to have the same amount of sales. Answer B, Company C operates in providing telecommunication services and does not show a transmission cost. whereas company D is engaged in the same industry and has substantial transmission costs. This sounds like C could potentially be manipulating. If they're in the same industry, they should have relatively similar margins and types of costs. So if we have substantial costs here and no costs here, there could be some manipulation there. And C, company A does not show an increase in capital assets, whereas company B operates in the same industry and has increased its capital assets by 50%. Both companies are engaged in financial consulting. This is more of a growth factor. Maybe this company A is not growing or having to reinvest on the same cycle as company B. So I think we can rule that out and go with C. These costs not showing up are going to be much more of a red flag than answers A or C are showing. For tax purposes, LexCorp uses straight-line depreciation to depreciate one of its assets. For financial reporting purposes, the company applies the accelerated depreciation method. If the asset was purchased for $550,000 and it has a 10-year useful life with a salvage value of $0, the tax base of the asset at the end of the first year is closest to. This will be a pretty straightforward calculation. We're just going to depreciate this for 1 year, which is going to be the cost of the asset minus the salvage. Salvage is 0, so it's just going to be $550,000. And then we're dividing that by useful life, gives us $55,000. We take that $55,000 and then we subtract that from our original basis, which is going to give us a tax basis of $495,000. Answer C. Turks & Company is a glass manufacturing firm whose income statement is being analyzed by an analyst at a local credit rating firm. Some relevant accounts for the year 2016 have been given in the following table. So we have our income statement and a bunch of information here down to earnings after tax. Using the given data, the fixed charge coverage ratio of the firm is closest to. So our fixed charge coverage ratio is going to be EBIT plus fixed charges pre-tax, and then we're going to divide that by interest plus fixed charges pre-tax. So what this is telling us is how much coverage do we have on our fixed charges. Our only fixed charge in this instance is going to be our lease payment. SG&A, depreciation, gross profit, all these numbers above here are not going to be considered for our fixed charge coverage ratio. So we're going to take our EBIT, 6,800, add that 350 to it. And then we're going to divide that by interest, 250, plus our lease payments of 350. And that gives us a ratio of just under 12. And if we round that, that will be closest to A for us.